Welcome to day 3 of graphing quadratic functions. Today we're going to take a moment to analyze quadratic functions and what their graphs look like. So before we get started in that, let's go ahead and remember, let's put your name at the top of your paper and the date. Just so, as always, we can make sure that your material belongs to you and doesn't get mixed up with anybody else's. All right, so there's a couple of notes that we need to address before we start graphing our functions. So I need you to come down towards the bottom of your paper. And here, the very last graph on this front page is negative x squared plus 2. And I'm actually going to ask you to separate some space and that way we can write a few very important notes here. Things to remember. So when we start with the function f of x equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared plus k. We have two basic rules that we can follow by that are going to be extremely helpful for us. We just have to remember those two rules. So the first rule, if something in the equation happens outside of the parentheses, then this is going to be a vertical change and it will go in the direction of the sign. So let's write that and then we'll discuss it. If something in the equation happens outside the parentheses, then this is going to be a vertical change. And vertical changes always go in the direction of the sign. Okay, so if you look up at our function, what two terms are outside of parentheses? That would be a and k. They are going to do something vertical with your graph because they're outside of the parentheses and they will go the direction of the sign. All right, so let's discuss things inside the parentheses. So number 2, if something in the equation happens inside the parentheses, then it's a horizontal change. The opposite of outside is inside. The opposite of vertical is horizontal. And with that horizontal change, it goes in the opposite direction of the sign. Let's write that down. So if something happens inside the equation, inside the parentheses, then it's a horizontal change. And as a result, it goes the opposite direction of the sign. So in our equation, at the moment, all we have listed for inside of the parentheses is h. There will, at another point in time, be a second value possibly here where the marker is. It might also be listed as A, or it might be listed as B, depending on who wrote the text or the worksheet. So for right now, we're going to say that this is just H. All right? Let's go look at the first problem on this handout. So this is just y equals x squared. It is the parent function. You remember that term? This is our parent function for all of the quadratics. And we know it's a U shape. The value in front of x squared is a positive 1, because if nothing is showing, it's assumed it's a 1 and it's positive. And we remember that it is nice and symmetric with its vertex there on the origin. And that's all it is. It's done. There you go. Very nice and tidy. Okay, so now let's go look at this second example right beside our parent function. Y equals the quantity of x minus 3 squared. So here, this minus 3 is inside the parentheses. This is a big deal. So it's going to go opposite the direction of the sign, and we know it's horizontal. So let's make a couple of notes to remind ourselves. One, this is a horizontal shift. We know it goes opposite the direction of the sign. And so what's a minus 3 becomes a movement to the right. So we say negatives are on the left, we're going opposite. We are going to shift right 3 units from the origin. So that's what we're going to do. That's all it's going to change. So let's draw it. We say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 markings on the right side of our x-axis. My vertex is going to be 3 units to the right. That's what our direction said to do. So we have our same symmetrical curve. It's just slid. It has a translation, 3 units to the right. Great. Okay, let's go look at our third example. So here we have the quantity of x squared plus 2. And that plus 2 is outside. Oops, I want a different color. Let's use blue. This is outside. This is a big deal. There are no parentheses, so therefore it must be outside of them. So because this is outside, we know that this is going to be a vertical shift. It does go the direction of the sign. Goes in the direction. And as a result, our plus 2 will shift our parabola up 2 units. Okay, so that's how we analyze our equation. And let's go do that real quick. So from our origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 markings up the y-axis. And we know our vertex is going to come up 2 units. And I will again have my nice, smooth, symmetrical curve. And it's just been translated 2 units up. All right, I would like you to do the next 2 graphs on this page, and finally the last 2 graphs on the next page before we have a little bit more information to dissect. If you get stuck, come and ask me.